I love my Kindle so much, and I love Kenley Davidson so much, and it's like a match made in heaven. And if you like a very slow burn romance, as in so slow burn, literally almost nothing happens until the very last page, and even then not that much happens. If you like that kind of romance, this is the book for you. The twist at the end of this book, because there is a twist, which I was not expecting at all in a contemporary romance book, the twist blew me out of the water. Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm talking about everything that I read in July. I read technically 8 books, but I'm going to be talking about 9 books in this video, and I'm stealing one of the books that I read on August 1st because the very last book that I read on July 31st, truly the night of July 31st, was a book that I was reading as a tandem read along with another book. And I just could not finish both of them in July. It was so frustrating. And I finished the other one the morning of August 1st. But because I read them as a tandem read and because I finished it so early on August 1st, I'm gonna count it in this month, and I'm going to talk about them together. So keep listening to find out what books those 2 were for that tandem read, although if you've been following me at all on my channel, you already know what they are because I have been reading them for literally months since I started this YouTube channel 2 months ago, give or take, and I'm finally done, and I'm so happy. It took forever. I don't know why it took me so long to finish them because they were both good. You'll find out soon enough what my exact ratings were, but I don't know, for some reason I was just dragging my feet. So I'm including both of them, even though technically one was in August. And for the rest of the books, there's actually quite a few sequels that I read this month. And I'm not gonna talk too much about the sequels. I'm kind of just gonna spotlight the first book in the series and then briefly touch upon the sequels because I don't wanna spoil anything. And I feel like the sequels, even just the descriptions for the sequels, it spoils stuff. So this might be a little bit of a shorter video, even though technically I read quite a few more books than usual, which, by the way, I read so many books this month, and also in August, it's August 7th right now, and I've already read 4 books. And the reason I read so much in July and why I read so much in August so far is because I had a 2-week period in between my semesters. My next semester is about to start this coming week, and my last semester ended roughly 2 weeks ago, and I took these 2 weeks to challenge myself to read as much as I possibly could. And those were 2 separate vlogs, 1 per week, and they're coming up after this video, so be sure to check out my channel for those later on. And without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So as always, I will be using the CAWPILE rating. I will link the creator of the CAWPILE rating system in the description below, so you can look it up if you want. She creates these amazing spreadsheets that I personally use, and I love them so much. And it has so much information for book tracking, for tracking every single thing you've read, how many pages there are, how many hours it is if it's an audiobook, the author, if it's a new author to you, or if you've read the author before, if it's a series, if it's continuing a series, if it's a DNF, if it's a series DNF or just a standalone DNF, what genre the books are, what year it was published, so much more. And it has all these really cool charts and bar graphs, pie graphs, everything at the end of the spreadsheet so that you can actually visualize exactly what you're reading and how you're reading it and whatnot. And I think it's so cool, and she makes them for free. Check her out. I love her so much. Highly recommend watching her video, getting some spreadsheets for free. There's a light theme, a dark theme, etc. I always use this rating system when I'm rating my books, and on Goodreads, I will just decide what exactly I feel like based on this rating. If it's right in between, then I have to round up or round down because Goodreads still to this day does not offer half ratings, which it's ridiculous. I don't understand why. I know Storygraph does. I'm not big into Storygraph. Maybe I'll switch over one day, but for now I'm definitely just on Goodreads, and I always base my rating on Goodreads off of what I rated it from this CAWPILE rating here. So let's jump right into the first book. The first one that I read was Caraval by Stephanie Garber. If I'm looking down, I'm sorry. This is my computer in front of me with the spreadsheet on it. I'll give you a little peek. You can see here the blue right there is for July and the yellow is for August. So if I'm looking down, it's because I'm looking at this amazing spreadsheet. As I mentioned, book number 1, Caraval by Stephanie Garber. And this is book 1 of the Caraval Trilogy, and I did read the other 2. The second one is Legendary. That was the 4th book that I read in July. And then the 3rd and final one is aptly named Finale, and that one was book 5 that I read this month. So I read 2 books in between Caraval and Legendary, but I'm just going to talk about all 3 of them right now before I then jump to the other 2 books that I read in between. And I listened to all of these on audiobook, and I've actually read all 3 of them before, so this was my second time reading all 3 of them, a complete series reread. This was actually in preparation for Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber, which I am currently listening to right now. I finished book 1, I believe August 2nd, and so it's not included in this, but it will be included next month, and hopefully book 2 and book 3, if I can get them in time, from Libby, my library. But for now, this was the trilogy. I rated all 3 of them when I very first read them 5 stars on Goodreads, and this reread, I also just rated all of them 5 stars. I don't usually change my rating, even if I don't necessarily agree with it the second time I've read it. I don't usually drop down a rating. If anything, maybe I'll round up if I decided for a second reread that I liked it more. But usually if I'm rereading a book, it's because it was 5 stars. So I don't actually think that that's ever happened. I just kept the same ratings. I really like them. I will put all 3 of them on the screen here. And so it might be a little bit busy. You might have to pause and enlarge the screen and look at it. I'm sorry, but I just want to have all 3 of them so that you can really see the first one, the second one, and the third one and compare them. I will try to make it as easy to read as possible. So as you can see, all 3 of them have pretty high ratings. I already said I rated them 5 stars when I first read them. This time it was no different. I definitely think I liked the first book a little bit less than the very first time that I read it. And I think it's because the first time I read it, everything was so new and special, and all of the magic was so, I don't know, shocking in a way, like in a very fun way. And everything was just so bright and shiny. And so I so easily overlooked anything else in the book that I didn't like because it was just so much fun. And I think the second time that I've read it now, it still was so much fun, but everything was not so new and so shiny. And so I was able to look a little bit closer at the plot and the characters and the writing style and everything. And there were some things that I didn't like that much. I really did not like Tella in the first book. I had forgotten how much I disliked her. I knew that I disliked her the first time I read it, but I'd forgotten how much I disliked her actually. Or maybe I just disliked her more the second reread. I don't know. But I really, really disliked her. I think she is a psychopath in the first book. I think the choices she makes are questionable at best and, I don't know, reprehensible at worst. Like, it's so shocking what she does and how she does it. And I just really did not like her in the first book. However, and this was quite strange, I was not expecting this, in the second and the third book, when I reread those, I actually liked her more on this reread, run through, or whatever you want to call it, than the very first time I read it. The very first time I read it, I think I just moderately disliked her in the first book, and then I was kind of neutral about her, honestly, in the second and the third book. I just didn't really care. I think it was the shock of, if you don't know, I've put the description for the first book on the very beginning, but not the second and the third book because I don't want to spoil it. But the second book basically follows Tella, who's the sister. The first book follows Scarlet, the second book follows Tella, and then the third book is a combination of Scarlet and Tella combined. And I didn't know this when I read the book for the very first time. And I think it was so jarring to me switching from Scarlet, who I'd really grown to love, then all of a sudden switching to Tella, who I didn't like that much. And I think it honestly took me the entire book to get used to it and to get over the fact that it was switching from Scarlet to Donatella. And I just really had an issue with it, and I couldn't get into the book because it was such a jarring switch. And this time, the second time that I've read the book, I knew that it was coming and I knew what to expect. And so it wasn't so jarring to me. And I actually really liked Tella's book. I'm shocked to say that, but I liked it so much more than the first time I read it. The first time I read it, I think maybe I rated it only 4 stars, but I think I rated it 5 stars, but I think it was like a very reluctant 5 stars. It was like 4.5, and I kind of wanted to round down, but the first one was so good and the series was so fun in general. I was like, I think I'll just round up to 5. However, this time rereading it, genuinely for me, it was a real genuine 5-star read. I really liked the sequel a lot. As you can see, I rated the characters a little bit better. And I will say I still do like Scarlet much more than Donatella, but I do really like Donatella now. And so I rated it a little bit higher because I think it was fun to explore that side a little bit more. And also I really love Dante. And I just really love some other characters. I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm not really going to say anything else, but I really liked the characters, and I think that there were more characters that I liked, and you got to have a more in-depth look at the characters as compared to the first book, which is why I rated it slightly higher. And as you can see in the third book, I rated it even higher. The characters for me just went up with all 3 of the books. I really liked the characters, and I feel like it built. Like the characters you got to know in the very first book, you got to explore a little bit more in depth in the second book. And then any characters that were introduced in that book, you got to explore more in depth in the third book, while also exploring the characters from the first and the second book even more in depth. And so it was just like this compounding, I don't know, character development and character relationships and everything. And I just really liked that. And so the third book for me was the best in terms of characters. I just thought it was so much fun. Also, I really, really liked the Fates. That whole thing, I think all of those characters were so much fun. Even though they're awful characters, they were still so much fun to read about. And so I really liked it. You can see the atmosphere I rated highest in, it's like absolutely flip-flopped. Exactly. Like it was 8, 9, 10 for the characters, and then this is 10, 9, 8 for the atmosphere. And that's because I think the atmosphere of Caraval itself is so much fun. It is my favorite atmosphere probably of any book I've ever read in my entire life. I just think it's so cool. The magic is so cool. Everything that happens in Caraval is so cool, and the magic system that Stephanie Garber created is so much fun. And I really liked it, and you get a little taste of that in the second book, but really not that much, honestly. And then in the third book, you don't have the Caraval atmosphere at all anymore, and so I still liked the atmosphere, but it wasn't as fun as the Caraval atmosphere. And then you can see for writing, I just gave it 8 all the way through, and then for plot, 9, 9, 8. Again, I really liked reading about Caraval itself, and it kind of just made me sad in the third book when there was no Caraval and they were just trying to sort things out and tie up all the plot ends. And I think it was fun and I enjoyed it, but I didn't like that plot as much as I liked the really exciting magical plot of Caraval. And then the second one, of course, just like, you know, hunting down Legend, trying to figure out who he is and everything. That was like the best. And then intrigue, that's for the exact same reasons. I just really liked Caraval, the intrigue. I just wanted to keep reading to see what new magic things were going to be happening, what were the next steps in Caraval, what was going to happen next. It was just so exciting and so much fun. Logic, just 8 all around, and enjoyment, just 9 all around. I just really enjoy the series. As I mentioned, I like Scarlet more than I like Tella, but I actually think potentially my favorite book might be the second one, because I just like Legend so much, and I really, really liked having that aspect. And I also liked, I don't want to spoil anything that happens in the first book. There's a couple that happens at the end, like officially happens at the end of the first book, and I just really like that couple, and I really liked reading about them in the second book. I don't want to spoil anything, maybe that already was too much, but I just really like them, and I just really liked reading about them being happy. And they weren't necessarily happy the whole time. There was a little bit of drama, but I also really liked that. And so the second one had a little bit of the good stuff from the first book, plus a little bit extra. Maybe that was my favorite one of the series. I don't know. The first one is very, very, very close. The third one, again, still really good book. I really enjoyed it, but to me, it just doesn't compare. It's like the first and the second one are here and the third one is here. And then maybe it's like the second one is like here and the first one is here. I don't know. I think I flip-flop, honestly, back and forth. Sometimes I think the first one was here, the second one was here, but then other days it's the opposite. So I really liked them. I don't know. If you've never read them before, what are you doing? They're so popular. You should go out and read them. They're so short too. They're very quick, easy reads. I love them. So next up, the second and the third book that I read, this was also a series, and this was the Faceless Mage, book 1, and then the second one, The Unseen Heir, and it's by Kenley Davidson, who, if you've been watching my channel at all, you know from my past vlogs that I am now obsessed with her, and she is perhaps my favorite author of all time. I love her so much. She writes really intelligently written and really creatively written slow burn clean romances, which that's like my bread and butter. Like, it's romanticies specifically, and I just love that so much. She just does such a good job. Like I said, she's so intelligent in how she writes things. I learn so many new words when I'm reading her books, and I'm so happy when I get to read her on my Kindle, because then I can just immediately look up the word and even save it if I want to do flashcards later. I love my Kindle so much, and I love Kenley Davidson so much, and it's like a match made in heaven, and I love it. And these books blew me out of the water. These were the first 2 books I've ever read from her. I've only read 3 books as of now. And the third one, I believe I also read at the very end of July. So you'll hear about another book from her later. Completely different type of book, I would say, but still such a good book. And so these ones, The Faceless Mage and The Unseen Heir, I already put the description on the screen so you know what it's about. If you skipped it, go back and pause it real quick. Again, it's just for the first book because I don't want to spoil anything by telling you what happens in the second book, because it absolutely spoils it. And I really would highly recommend you to read these books. If you like clean, slow burn romance, if you like romantasy, if you like anything to do with like fae, elves, etc., magic kind of things, this is the book for you. It's so good. I just love it so much. I cannot speak about it enough. As you can see from my ratings, I gave it very high ratings overall. I actually did end up rating the first book, The Faceless Mage, 4 stars. I gave it 4.5 stars and I rounded down to 4, and that is only because a lot of it takes place in court. And if you know anything about me, you know I really just don't like court life, like royal court life. Like, it just to me is so boring, and I just really don't like it. And so for me, unfortunately, this book was like, I don't know, sometimes a little, not necessarily boring, because honestly it was very exciting and it really kept me entrapped the entire time. So I don't want to say it was boring. To me, it just was too long in court life and too long in the royal palace, and I was kind of really hoping and expecting that some of it would take place outside, or I don't know, it just gave me the vibe that she might be on the run, and so she might be like in the wilderness, in the woods or something, and that's not the first book at all. The second book has a little bit of that, but not the first one. So that was kind of a shock to me, and I think because of the shock, it was kind of hard to get over it and to be like, okay, well, this is about court life. I just have to get used to it and just go with it. And it kind of took me a really long time to get over that. And so strictly for that reason, I took the 4.5 and I rounded down to 4. However, the second book is solid 5 stars. It's not 4.5 rounded up to 5. It's just a pure 5. Like magical 5. It's like, it's so rare that it's a pure 5 and it's not a 4.5 or 4.75 rounded up. Like, this truly was just 100% pure 5, and it was so good. And you can see that on The Unseen Heir, the second book, my ratings were a little bit higher, but honestly, all of the ratings all around, characters for both of them, 9. I love the characters so much. I think they were so, I don't know, so multifaceted and so intelligently written. How many times can I say intelligent when I'm talking about Kenley's writing? It's the perfect word for her writing. She's such a talented author, and she just makes these characters that are so cool. I just love them so much. They're like, both of them, the male protagonist and the female protagonist, are now my favorite characters of all time. I just love them so much. Like, such cool characters in this book, so strong and independent and confident. Like, I'm specifically talking about Leisa, the female protagonist. She was so cool. I love her so much. And so the characters, amazing. The only reason it's not perfect is because some of the side characters I just didn't really care about, and I kind of thought that the king was a little bit cliche, but like literally it was like nothing. Like, it's not like the characters were bad, it's just they weren't amazing, and for me to give 10 stars it would have to be everything was amazing. And as you can see, the atmosphere in the second book was 10 stars, not 10 stars, but I don't know, 10 out of 10. And I just think that one was so much fun. Like I said, the atmosphere for the first one, court life, a lot of royalty, just blah, 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 blah. I don't really like that stuff. It's just not my cup of tea. But the second one, she was in the woods. She was in the wilderness. She was moving in between towns, in between kingdoms. It was so much fun and so exciting. And that's exactly what I was looking for. I really like it when books take place in nature. I don't know, I just really enjoy it, and this book just did such a good job. Writing, 9 stars. Honestly, looking back on it now, I think I should have given it even 9.5. I don't really know why I didn't give it 10, other than I just don't have that feeling in the pit of my stomach that says to give it a 10. I don't know. I really go by that feeling, and I don't know. I can't really like put my finger on it. Like, I can't really say there was this one specific thing I didn't like. I just feel like if it's a 10 out of 10 writing style, then I just feel like I would know deep in my core and I would feel so confident about giving it 10 out of 10. And for Kenley Davidson, it's so close. Like, if I gave it 10 out of 10, I would be happy with it, but I don't know, I'm reserving 10s for like that stomach feeling, you know, like that gut feeling that tells you to give it 10. That's really the only way that I will actually give something 10 out of 10. And I just didn't get that with the writing, even though the writing was so phenomenal. I just didn't have like that gut feeling telling me to do it, if that makes sense. I'm sorry, but I do think I should have given her 9.5 because it was so good. And then as you can see, plot, again, same reasons as I already explained. The plot I just think was more exciting in the second book. Intrigue, again, intrigue for me was just there when they were in the forest. You know, she, like Leisa, the main character, she's just so confident and cool. And she was just handling everything. She was just being a boss, and I just loved it so much. And so the intrigue was 100% there for me. The plot was great. I just loved it so much. And then the logic, I really like. I think the world was so well explained and the magic system was well explained. And I think it was just the right amount to leave a little bit of mystery, a little bit of intrigue, but also the perfect amount so that you really know what's happening and you're not really confused. And enjoyment, a 9 and a 10. Really, I enjoyed the second book so unbelievably much. I cannot even put it into words, really. I loved it. The first one I also loved so much. If it just was not so much court life, it also would have been 10 out of 10 for me. I love these books. I can't say anything else. If you want to hear more about them, you can check out my vlog. I will link it up here, but you can check that out to listen to more thoughts and more ramblings on these books. But all I have to say is just, if what I mentioned before, slow burn, clean romance, like kind of fae, elf life, magical kingdoms, political intrigue, that kind of stuff, if those things interest you, even at all, this is such a good book and you should try it out. It is possibly my top 3, top 5 series of all time. I don't know, I'd have to like really sit down and like have them duke it out and everything to figure out, but it's definitely way up there. I love it so much, and I can't wait to buy the books because I know I'm gonna read them again and again and again. So good. And so then the 6th book that I read this month was technically a standalone book, but part of a series of standalone books. And this was the other Kenley Davidson book that I read, and it's called Traitors, Masque. It is technically the Andari Chronicles #1, and they're all basically fairy tale retellings. And so I actually didn't have any interest in reading this book. I don't know, fairy tale retellings interest me sometimes, but in general, they're not really what I would personally choose to reach for. The only reason I would consider reaching for a fairy tale retelling is if I've read the author and I know that I really like them and I'm just looking for something to consume from them. And that is literally the only reason why I picked this book. It's because I didn't have anything else on Libby other than this book. And so it was either between that or buying another book, which honestly, I've got no problem with buying anything from Kenley Davidson since I've now read 3 books from her, and all 3 of them were spectacular 5-star books. I loved them all. I know I gave the first one only 4 stars, but again, that was just because I didn't have that gut feeling and it just was Court Life. But really, it was a 5-star book. It was a 4.5-star book. And I love them all so much. And so I would absolutely buy something from her. But at this point in time, I was unsure, like, is it just that this series is so good, or is it really the author herself? Like, does everything she touched turn to gold? Or was it really just the Legends of Abreia, which was the series from before? And so then I read this book, and I can tell you right now, everything Kenley Davidson touches turns to gold. It is not just a fluke. It was not just the Legends of Abreia. It's everything that she's written, that I've read so far at least, has been so amazing. She just has such a cool, intelligent way of writing. Again, that word, intelligent, it's the perfect way to describe her writing. If you read her, you probably know exactly what I'm saying, and you probably agree with the word intelligent to describe Kenley Davidson. I love it so much. And so for Traitor's Masque, this was an audiobook. I don't think I mentioned, but the Faceless, Mage, and the Unseen Heir, those were ebooks. And Traitor's Masque was an audiobook, and it was just really short, easy to listen to. The narrator for the audiobook also was so good. She was British, and it was just so much fun to listen to it. It made it sound all the more sophisticated and intelligent, and it was tons of fun. And as you can see, I gave this high ratings all around, pretty even ratings, all 8s or 9s, really nothing too low, nothing outstandingly high, like 10 out of 10. But the runners-up, again, writing. I just physically, I don't think I'm capable of rating Kenley Davidson anything under a 9. She's just so good. And then the plot was also a 9 that I rated. And I just think the plot was really fun. It was a Cinderella retelling, as you saw from the description, if you read it. If not, you can go back and pause it if you want, or you can just keep going. But it's a Cinderella retelling, and it's more based on the movie Ever After, if you've seen it. I loved that movie when I was a kid. It was so good. This is truly like the backstory, at least, and the history, the foundation for this book is truly like 1-to-1 for Ever After. It is so similar. Just the whole backstory is basically exactly the same. The only difference is that the actual plot and what actually happens is different. And that's like a little bit more of, I don't know, not necessarily a spy novel, but almost like a little bit of a mystery, kind of. And I think that was fun. It's not totally my vibe, and as I've mentioned before, I really don't like royal court life, kind of books about royalty in general. I'm not a super big fan. And again, the only reason I picked this up is because I just wanted to read more from Kenley Davidson, and there was nothing available at any of my libraries other than Traitor's Masque. So I had to do it. And I really enjoyed it, despite it being about royalty and court life and whatnot, and having a decent chunk of the book be in court life. Not all of it, not even the majority, I guess I would say. It was probably maybe 30 to 40% or so. Despite that big chunk, I still really, 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 really loved this book. It was just so well written, as I said. I loved it. I thought the plot was really nice. It was fun. It was interesting. It was intriguing. I love it. If you really like Cinderella, if you like Ever After, if you like fairy tale retellings, and if you like a very slow burn romance, as in so slow burn, literally almost nothing happens until the very last page, and even then, not that much happens. If you like that kind of romance, this is the book for you. When I was thinking about reading this book, I looked at the reviews, and some of the negative reviews were saying that this book has zero romance, and I disagree, but I really like slow burn romance. And if you don't like slow burn romance, you probably are going to think that there's no romance. But I really like I don't know, the anticipation, the tension beforehand. Like, you can tell if somebody's interested in somebody else. Like, they don't have to make out with them to, I don't know, to have it be super abundantly clear that they're interested in that other person. I think it's fine when they're just interested and they're kind of tiptoeing around it. I personally like it, but even if you didn't like it, I feel like it's crazy to not say it is a type of romance. I mean, it's not, maybe it's not your type of romance, but it is a type of romance. Like, there definitely is romance. It just is so slow burn, so tiptoeing around it kind of until the very final page, truly. But it's so good. And then the second to last book, or technically the third to last book, but technically second to last thing that we will talk about, is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. And I listened to this one on audiobook, and as you can see, my ratings were really good for this book. It's a contemporary romance, which, again, if you know anything about me, you know they're not really my cup of tea. I tend to read them in between books as kind of fillers or palette cleansers, so that in between reading kind of heavier 500 plus page books, or books where I really have to learn a magic system and a ton of stuff, then I'll just read something where I can really just shut my brain off, or I'll listen to something where I can shut my brain off. Like, this book was the perfect cleaning book. I cleaned the entire house top to floor, and I just put this book on in the background, and it was so perfect. It was the perfect companion for this. It wasn't too much thought, and it was fun and really funny sometimes. I really like this book. Like, for a contemporary romance book, amazing. Like, really one of the best contemporary romance books that I have read. The only contemporary romance book I can think of that I liked more was The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I loved that book so much. But this book I really, really enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars, and it was 4.5 rounded down to 4. And that's because there were some characters that I didn't like. There were just also some situations where I just was so annoyed, and I wanted to like reach through the book, or in this case, since it was an audiobook, reach through my phone screen and just like shake the characters. It just really drove me up a wall sometimes, honestly. I think the character's mom made me so angry, especially the final twist at the end. It made me so angry. Like, that truly was shocking, which is another reason why this is such a good book and why it was so good in my mind for contemporary romance. The twist at the end of this book, because there is a twist, which I was not expecting at all in a contemporary romance book. The twist blew me out of the water. I don't even know how else to explain it. It literally blew me out of the water. It was so shocking, and I don't know what else to say because I don't want to spoil anything, but I was not expecting it, and it's such a horrible thing, and if you read it, it will make you so sad and angry simultaneously. I loved it. I think it was so good because, as I mentioned, I just was not even remotely expecting it. I feel like in normal mysteries or thrillers, there's always hints left behind. You can kind of piece it together if you're really trying to. I mean, for me, I'm usually maximum 50% surprised at the end of a mystery or thriller. Usually, not always, but most of the time, it's really not blowing me out of the water. And this, I was not expecting it. I thought it's a contemporary romance, you know, things are going to be happy, sunshine, flowers, and rainbows at the end. Like, it's always the same. And this twist, like, just, yeah, I can't say anything else about it. I'm not going to spoil anything. It was so good. And so you can see that the plot, I rated 9. That was one of the highest ones. And enjoyment and writing were also 8.5. And so those were also kind of the forerunners for the highest ratings. And I think the writing was really good. I really liked the author. I think that she, I don't know, wrote in a really relaxed, fun way. And it was laugh out loud funny sometimes. I wouldn't say it was like a funny book overall, but there were definitely moments where I laughed really hard. And I just think it was kind of a feel-good summer read. I just really enjoyed it. I was surprised. The lowest rating is atmosphere, as you can see, and that's mostly just because, I don't know, the location, the setting, and everything wasn't that interesting. I don't know. I feel like can't really put my finger on it. It didn't really intrigue me that much. I'm sorry. For me, it was a 7. That was my gut feeling. That's what I went with, and I'm happy with that rating. Yeah. And like I said, overall 4.5, rounded down to 4. It just, like, it wasn't such an amazing book, like nothing I've ever read before. Like, it wasn't like that, which is why I rounded down instead of rounding up. But in terms of contemporary romance, it was so good. And I just think it's a really fun summer read. I enjoyed it. And then the final 2 books that I will talk about, again, one of these technically was August 1st, but I'm counting it in this because it was a tandem read and I just want to do them together. And this is Dark Skies and Dark Shores by Danielle L. Jensen. It is the book 1 and book 2 in the Dark Shores trilogy. I had previously read book 0.5, which was Tarnished Empire. And then I decided to read Dark Scores. I can't even tell you the amount of time I've said Dark Scores because it's and then I almost said Dark Shies. Dark Shores and Dark Skies. So hard. And so I read these books as a tandem read after I've already read Tarnished Empire. And I heard you could read them as a tandem read and that Danielle L. Jensen came out with them actually as a single book, or she wanted to, but her editor said, that's way too big, nobody's gonna read all that, you have to split it up. And so then she took it apart and it was one book, which is Dark Shores, I believe is the first one. And that is with, I believe, Tariana and Marcus. And then Dark Skies, which technically is book 2, and that is with Lydia and Killian. And so it's constantly switching off between the POVs in the 2 books. And when you read it tandem, there's a little bit of time in the beginning when they're kind of commingling. At least 3 of them have interactions kind of in the beginning, not all at once, but, you know, off and on. And you get the point of views from both of the sides with like their inner thoughts and everything. And it's really, really fun to read it as a tandem reading guide. I don't think you really need to read them tandem after, I don't know, maybe the first 15% or so, because then the books are so far separated, they never come into contact again. And so for me personally, I think I would have rather read the tandem reading guide for the beginning and then separated them, because it felt like it was never ending, honestly. It just kept dragging on and on and on and on. And it's because both of these books are decently long. I think I read them as actual books, so I've got it written down on my fancy little spreadsheet here. 368 pages and 480 pages. Dark Skies is the longer one. It's considerably longer actually, and so collectively this is 800 pages, give or take, and it just felt like it was never ending. And I feel like maybe I would have actually rather split it up and then just finish the shorter one so I could get like a little bit of a burst of energy and then have the power to finish Dark Skies, the longer one. But because I read them fully together, it just really dragged on sometimes, and I really struggled in the middle. The beginning, it was really fun and really exciting, especially with the, you know, triple point of views at one point. But then in the middle, it really kind of had a little dip, and for me was a little bit boring, but then it really picked up the pace, and got really exciting again. But then the other one kind of dipped down, and then this one dipped down, and then this one went up. And so in a way, the tandem reading guide was nice because when one of them was a little bit boring, the other one was really having some good stuff going on, some juicy bits, and it would kind of make up for it. However, I think, I don't know, if I were recommending this to a friend, I would say do the tandem reading guide in the beginning, and then if you want to continue reading it. But if you ever feel like it's sludging along, maybe just stop and just finish the shorter one, because they have no context, like I said. So the tandem reading guide truly does not matter after the beginning little bits. Yeah. And so my ratings for these ones, very, very, very similar ratings overall. I rated both of them 4.5 stars and rounded both of them down to 4, just because I didn't have that gut feeling of it being a 5-star book. As I mentioned, there were times where it was really slow, and then there were times where it really picked up the pace and it was super fun. So yeah, it was kind of really like a roller coaster. But both of them have almost the same ratings. The atmosphere for both of them, so much fun. I really liked this world. I was told Dark Shores was kind of a piratey book, which is literally the only reason I started the entire series, and it's not. I think they referred to themselves at the very end of the book one time kind of as pirates, but they're not. They're traitors, which I get traitors was kind of like code for pirate back in the days sometimes, but it's not in this book. Like, they genuinely legally went from port to port and then traded goods. Like, the maximum piratey thing that they did was taking some stuff off of an already sunken ship, which, I don't know, if that counts as piracy, then honestly, like, that's like nothing to me. Like, I wanted actual pirates. I wanted pirate battles. I wanted, swashbuckling and buccaneers and everything, and I did not get that from this book at all. So do not go into it thinking that it's really going to be about pirates. It's not. It's still a really good series other than that, but it's not about pirates, and that was really disappointing. I thought it was going to be different, but I did really just enjoy it. It's just really cool. The whole idea, if you've read the description, again, go back if you haven't and you want to read it now, and then pause it to read it. But it's kind of like there's these two worlds, and on the same world, but two sides of the world, and they've not really met, and they don't even really know about each other's existence. And it's just really cool how there's so much magic on one side of the world, and it's so different. And then kind of a Roman sort of empire has completely conquered the other side of the world, and they've outlawed any religion at all. And there's just an utter lack of magic and also humanity. And it's just like, the difference between them is very interesting. The fact that they didn't know about each other, the fact that there's like these Zenthier stems, which are like crystals that you touch and they teleport you basically. Like, it was just really fun. I really liked it. I really, really liked Dark Skies for the majority of the book more. For me, Dark Shores was kind of boring in the middle, and then maybe at the 60% mark, then it really picked up, and then the final 40% of the book was so interesting and fun, because then they were kind of conquering some places. I'm not going to give anything away, but it was just very interesting what was happening, and the relationship in Dark Shores I liked more than the relationship in Dark Skies. I think both of them were incredibly slow burn. Like, you're really not gonna be that satisfied with either of them, but you're gonna be more satisfied with Dark Shores for sure. But very slow burn, very kind of tiptoeing around, very much like, no, we can't, but we want to kind of romance. I really liked it in Dark Shores more. Dark Skies to me was, I don't know, it was fine. It was really nice and I enjoyed it, but Dark Shores, the relationship between the two main characters was just so interesting because they're so different. Truly, they are black and white, like literally and figuratively in every sense of the word. They're just so different. Two sides of the coin. And also the only other part where it differed is in intrigue. And in Dark Skies, I gave it 0.5 points more. So instead of 7.5, I gave it 8. And that's because in the world of the Dark Shores, it's just so interesting. I don't want to spoil anything, but there's just these creatures, and it's just so interesting. It led to a really, really, really fun meet between the two main characters, Killian and Lydia, which I really, really enjoyed. That was one of my favorite ways of a character to meet ever. I really like it when characters are kind of thrown into things together, and that book had it, and it did it so well. And as I mentioned, Dark Shores was a little bit more boring in the middle, and then it got super exciting, and Dark Skies was a little bit more of up and down, but from the beginning on. So there wasn't a huge lapse of time, really that much, where it was super boring, and Dark Shores also wasn't super boring. It just was kind of boring. And maybe it's because I was doing the tandem reading guide, and so maybe if I was reading it myself, I would have gone through that section quicker and it wouldn't have felt like such a big section. But because I was reading them together, it did feel like a big section. I don't know. Anyways, I really liked them. Again, one of them was August 1st, but I'm throwing it in because it was the tandem reading guide and I wanted to talk about them together, and it was close enough. It was like 12 hours after the cutoff, so I think it's fine. Anyways, those were all of the books that I read for July. Let me know in the comments below if you've also read any of these books and what your thoughts are about them. And let me know if you know about Kenley Davidson, because I would love to meet somebody else who knows about her, who loves her, who has any other recommendations like her. I feel like she's such a breath of fresh air, and I don't know, I'm really enjoying her, and I would love to read other authors like her. So if you know of any, please let me know. If not, just let me know what your favorite author in general is in the comments below. I'd love to check them out also. And I hope you guys had an amazing reading month for July, and I hope you do have an amazing reading month for August, as well as an amazing week. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.